I haven't done this in a while. Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to do something very different. We are going to do a book review 2023 of all the books I read this year. And I'm doing this because both my siblings think I should, because I've read 45 books this year. I have a couple hundred books behind me. Reading is a big part of my life. I read a lot of books this year. I read a lot of different kinds of books this year. I read everything from children's novels to comic books to like high literature to romance to Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. I've read a lot of things, so if you like any kind of reading, there's a high likelihood I read something this year that you'll also enjoy, so I gotta tell you about it. And I have some opinions this year about the books I read, so this was a perfect time to start. So why not just dive into it and stop wasting time? I started this year out by reading Happily Ever Island by Crystal Sestari. It is a book put out by Disney Hyperion. It is a Disney book all about these two girls who go to like a Disney island where they live out their dreams of being Elsa and Cinderella she's Cinderella and she's Merida on the island, and they literally like live out their dreams of being those characters. I rated this 5 stars right off the bat, and it was great. If you like anything Disney, and it's not a children's book, it is a YA romance, kind of. There's like romance subplot lines, but if you like Disney and you are a teenager or a young adult, as I am, 21, reading some of these books, I would highly recommend this book. It was really good, well worth it. The second book I read was The Fiction Between Us by Julie Olivia. This is a self-published book. It is the second in the series of the Honeywood Fun Park novels. Yeah, that's the name of the series. These are really good, just like romance books of a theme park. They all work in the theme park. The first one was really good. I read it last year. This is the second one. They're both dressing up as characters in the theme park. Obviously, I was really into theme parks at the beginning of this year. They both are characters at a theme park, and they slowly, fall in love with each other, even though they hate each other. Perfect romance plot. There's actually 2 more in the series that I haven't read yet that I will hopefully be reading this year. But she is just a book on Amazon. She self-published it, and I think it's really good for self-published book. I've read a lot of self-published books, and this is one of the better ones. I rated this 4 stars apparently, which I don't know why I didn't rate it 5 stars, but there you go. Then I went into February by reading Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I don't know how I'm definitely not saying it right. This I had to read for class. It was about what was this book about? I read this book for class. It is about it's a girl who works in a convenience store, and there's something like in her mind where that is the only thing she is good at, and that is the only thing she can do. And it was really interesting. I would never have picked this up on my own, but I had to read it for class, so I obviously had to read it. And I liked it way more than a lot of the books I read for class, especially like before this. I read a lot of just like random things that I really didn't like. But I remember enjoying it. I rated it 4 stars, which means that's pretty good. Interesting, almost psychological, but not quite. It was more fun than that. I don't like deep psychological books, so I don't know, this might be interesting. Next, I read Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. I am a huge Harry Potter fan, and I am a Slytherin, and I love Tom Felton and Draco Malfoy. No surprises there. So I wanted to read this book really badly, and look, you can see there's pictures of him as Draco Malfoy on the back. Good old Tom Felton, Draco Malfoy. I rated this book 4 stars. It's about his life. It's a lot about his life more than it is about behind the scenes making of Harry Potter, but there is a lot of that in here. I thought it was going to be a lot more about the making of Harry Potter and a lot less about his life, but I guess it makes more sense that it's more about his life and less about Harry Potter, because that's kind of like more important to him would be his life. So I thought it was a really interesting read. If you like Harry Potter at all, I would say that this is a good read for you. It's not obviously fantastical, but it is a really good like look at behind the scenes of what's going on. So I actually like this quite a lot, 4 stars. I remember liking some chapters more than others, but overall it was actually a pretty good book. Okay, so then in March I read Kingdom Keeper's Inheritance: The Shimmer by Ridley Pearson. This is the 1 millionth book in the Kingdom Keeper series at this point. Where is it on my shelf? Right there. That all of those are Kingdom Keepers books. I've read all of them. This is the most recent. It is a very complicated series about very many things, but mostly the original Kingdom Keepers series, those ones right there, were all about a bunch of kids who could become holograms at night within the Disney parks, and they were fighting the Disney villains. Crazy concept of a book, I know. If you like the Disney parks at all in magic and fighting, I would highly recommend the other Kingdom Keepers books. This one, however, why did I rate this 4 stars? I guess I rated this 4 stars. I remember not liking this book very much. I started skimming through chapters of it because I was kind of like over it. It was very different than the other Kingdom Keepers books. These starts like his newest series of Kingdom Keepers books where it's their children now and they live in Epcot, and instead of being the holograms at night, they have this magic wand that this kid is holding, and they can like do things, and as you can see, he's see-through, and that was a big point of contention for some reason. I remember my friends and I were talking about that on this book cover. It looks kind of crazy, but I remember not loving this one. So if the concept of Disney parks and saving them and protecting the magic, and there's a little bit of mystery in those, I would highly recommend just looking up normal Kingdom Keepers by Ridley Pearson. Those are worth it. There's like 7 of them originally, I think, and I love those books. And then there's like 3 more after that that are also them, and then like 2 companion novels. I think there's literally like 10 books. I don't know if I recommend this. Okay, then I read, this is Teen Titans Robin by Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. It is a graphic novel. It is the 4th in a series of the Teen Titans, where each of them is kind of looking at one of the different Teen Titans. This is the 4th. It is Robin, this is Damian Wayne. This is Dick Grayson, also Robin. I love Batman and his 4 children who all were Robin at one point. I know frighteningly too much about all of it, from graphic novels and comic books and fan fictions and the internet and Pinterest. And I love them. I love this book. I rated it 5 stars. I rated every Teen Titans graphic novel 5 stars. I read them all last year. This one came out this year. I don't know, if you like superheroes, but you've never looked into how many children Batman has, I would recommend looking at some of these kinds of things. It's actually really fun seeing younger superheroes. I guess that's always been in media, but I've never really seen much of it. So I really like these a lot. They're really fun. Some people might say graphic novels and comic books aren't real books. So those people might be my brother. But if Goodreads says that I can log it, it's a book, and I'm logging it on Goodreads, and it counts towards my reading goal. I guess I'll just show you my iPad. I ended March by reading, I'm just going to show you my Goodreads, All the Young Dudes. Here's 1 through 4, book 1 by Miss King Bean 89. Read it on my phone, read it straight off of the internet. AO3, good old Harry Potter Marauders fan fiction. 10 out of 10 recommend. I rated them all 5 stars. You'll see the rest of them in a little bit, also on my iPad, because I read them all online. Great books. Not really even really books. I needed them to get my reading goal, apparently. But I genuinely love them. They are about the 4 Marauders: James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, and their time at Hogwarts. Not Harry Potter, Harry Potter's dad and all of them and their time at Hogwarts. It's a completely, just someone on the internet wrote it, and everyone loved it so much that it became its own thing. I recommend it. It's very long. It took me forever to read. I read it all on my phone. Some people print them out on their own. Do whatever you want. I highly recommend reading them. 5 stars. In April, I started off by reading a good old comic book, Nightwing, Better Than Batman. This really goes down this is the older one. This is Dick Grayson, who was once Robin, is now Nightwing. This kind of is where I started really reading comic books. It's just a comic book. I rated it 4 stars. Apparently I rated it 4 stars. I don't know why. Once again, if you like comic books, if you like Batman, if you like children's superheroes or young adult superheroes, I recommend these. I have fallen in love with them. Then I read We Could Be Villains by Megan McCullough. This is very much like Marvel, as you see. It is all about, it follows this girl, and the superhero movies that she sees are actually real. She gets encountered by the supervillain of this movie series, which is kind of a lot like Loki. Is a very similar vibe to Loki. Most of the characters have very similar vibes to Marvel characters. There's one that I would say is a lot like Hawkeye, one that's a lot like Natasha, Black Widow. But it was really fun. It's a romance between her and the supervillain, while also she's like a double agent trying to stop him but help him, but there's mystery because nobody knows who he is or how he got his powers. And also she's keeping everything a secret because these are movie characters, not real characters. I rated this book 5 stars. I like this book a lot. I highly recommend it as anyone, once again, who likes Marvel. I guess I do have a type. This is more of a book than the graphic novels, obviously. If you like Marvel, DC, superheroes, romance, subterfuge, I recommend this book. Then, just to finish out April, I read the second part of All the Young Dudes on the Phone. Once again, loved it. Same review as the first one. 5. It moved. 5 stars. Then, in May, I read a lot of books, which started with Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This book is fairly old, but one of my friends got it for me for Christmas, I believe, last year, or maybe it was for my birthday last year. And I thought, I mean, might as well read it. I love John Green's books. I think I've just read The Fault in Our Stars, so I said that very strongly for someone who's read one book by John Green. Oh, I read the Anthropocene Reviewed as well. I like that a lot. So I guess I've read 2. I've read 3 of his. I have a couple more that I want to read of his. But I like this a lot. It was about the main character had anxiety and she's like super focused on all these things and she kind of spirals, which is what this spiraling thing is, and she does it a lot. And it was written really well, and I really liked her main character. She's trying to solve the mystery of her like old best friend whose dad is dead and they think maybe he's alive, and her old best friend's in it, and they're kind of falling in love while they're also solving this mystery. And it was really good. It balanced a lot of things really well. The mystery, there's kind of a romance building plot there, her anxiety and like her obsessiveness with things. Really good book. I rated this 5 stars. I highly recommend. I recommend all of John Green's books, even if I haven't read them. They're really good, just like YA, romance, interesting books. He writes really well. I really like him. His brother Hank Green as well, if you ever read his stuff. Then I also read, I'm gonna show you on my iPad. It's it's Listen to Your Heart by Katie West. We read this, me and my brother and sister read this from December to May, where my brother would walk into our room and read a chapter of it every single night before we all went to bed. But it was even better because then like my sister moved to college and moved on the dorm, so we couldn't do it throughout the week. We just did it every weekend. We would read 3 chapters of this book together, where he would read it out loud and we would just listen. And it was awful. I hated this book. I Listen to Your Heart by Katie West. Highly don't recommend it. It was all about this girl and her class as they're making a podcast, but she's falling in love with like 3 different boys, but also her best friend is falling in love with a boy, and also her neighbors and her cousins are in her house all the time. And there was like a million details of like nonsense. I remember so vividly there was one chapter where the only thing that happened in the chapter was like she went into her room, she called her best friend and like said nothing of substance, and then she threw something away in her trash can that was next to her desk that was described for like a paragraph or something. And I was like, that's too much description about a trash can that has no importance to the story. I rated it 3 stars apparently, so maybe I liked the ending, but I don't remember liking the ending either. I don't recommend Listen to Your Heart. I recommend go find something better. I don't recommend it. Okay, then I read Nightwing, Back to Bloodhaven. This is just another comic book. It's the same thing as, it's just the next one of that other one that I read. 5 stars. I love them. I don't know. I'm not going to try to convince you to read all the Batman comics, but I read them and I like them a lot. So I don't know. Do with that information what you will. Then, okay, the next book I read was The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan and Mark Oshiro. This was a great book. Will and Nico going to Tartarus. I should explain more. This is a Percy Jackson book. It is one of the side books. It takes place after all the Percy Jackson. There's a lot of them. Is it on this side? It is. This whole shelf is 99% Percy Jackson, but it is everything written by Rick Riordan. Everything that he's written, I own on that shelf. I read most of them. I love Percy Jackson. It is my favorite series. It is all of them. This takes place most recently after, all of the Percy Jackson series, all of the Heroes of Olympus, all of the Trials of Apollo, then this book. So, there's like 15 books technically to come before this. I don't know if you need to read them all. I mean, if you just want to, you might need to read them. If you've read the original Percy Jackson books, I think you could understand what's going on in these. Or if you've read Heroes of Olympus, which is the secondary series. If you didn't read Trials of Apollo, I don't think that matters. Because a lot of people didn't read that series, and it doesn't really matter. You just need to know they're demigods. 5 stars. This was a great book. It's a pretty big book for Percy Jackson. I liked it a lot and had both of their perspectives, which is they do sometimes. I liked it a lot. Really good story, really heartwarming. Next, I read The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. This was a really good book. This was, I really wanted to read it, and then Haley Fan read it, and my brother was like, hey, Haley Fan read this book. And I was like, hey, I want to read that book. So then I read it. I rated it 5 stars. This is about the main character going to a lake house that her family owns, and all of her extended family's there. They're all hanging out. And the entire time they're there, there's a game of Assassin that they're playing. And so they're playing the game of Assassin, which is like, kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Kind of like Mafia. I don't know. They're like fake trying to get each other with squirt guns. They're trying to squirt each other. They each have a person they have to get. It's a really fun, I've never actually played it. It's a really fun game to read them all playing. But she's falling in love with this boy that came that is, I can't remember at all why he was there. That he's not related to her, but he's there in one of the cabins. And the two of them are falling in love while they're playing a game of Assassin. While there's also like, she's mourning the loss of her older sister. Type of, that's in here too. That's happening. It was a really good book. I read this I was already out of school, so I was in a summer mood. I think this is a really good summer book. The Summer of Broken Rules, obviously. I would read it again. I wouldn't read more books by her. I haven't had time, so I will hopefully this year. Then in May, going into June, I reread the entire Selection series. I read the first one, which is just the Selection, and then the Elite in May. I don't have the Selection right now. It's downstairs somewhere. I'm not gonna go find it. I read those 2 in May, and then, and then I read The Heir, The One, and The Crown all in June. I read all 3 of them. So I finished the whole series in 2 months, which I've read the whole series before. I've read all the Selection years and years and years ago. And I try every summer to reread one book series that I like, that I haven't done. In the past, I did Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus for the past 2 summers. I also did Kingdom Keepers one of the summers, which was, I read all 11 of them. So this year I just wanted to do something smaller. I wanted to do the Selection so that I could try to read more books that were newer. And I think I rated them all 5 stars. The Selection, the Elites, and the One are one like contained series of America as she is in a competition to win the hand of the Prince of, I don't remember what the heck the kingdom it's the United States of America, but it's after a war, so you know it's something different. And now there's a kingdom. I don't remember what it's called. His name is Max, Prince Maxon, Maxon, and her name is America Singer. And I love the 2 of them. And there's also, they're kind of falling in love, but then also she has her best friend in the world who she was going to marry and then didn't. And then he becomes a guard in the royal palace. So it's, you know, it's a good love triangle between the 3 of them. And that goes on for 3 books, which doesn't sound right, but it's kind of like, I've heard it described as like the Hunger Games, but no killing, which is very similar. It starts with like, 35 girls, and it ends up with one of them winning the competition, obviously. And so there's a lot of like, there's more subterfuge. I used that word earlier. So those are really good. And then The Heir, I'm throwing things. The Heir and The Crown are its own duology, so you could just read the first 3. I don't think you should just read these 2 by themselves. There's a lot that you wouldn't understand what's going on. But it's the next generation. It's her selection, so there's 35 boys that come in for one of them to win her hand in marriage. And it's really good. I love the boys in this one a lot. There's a scene of them like baking in the kitchen, and I don't even know what they're making, but they're baking something. And I remembered it so vividly that was actually the only scene I remembered going into the Selection. And I couldn't remember where it was. It was in one of these. Really good. Okay, I ended June off by finishing All the Young Dudes. I kind of was just reading these on my phone the whole time and just like in between other things. 5 stars. Loved it a lot. I don't know. I can't say much more about it. It was great. Starting off the month of July, I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's on my iPad because I also read this on my phone. I just kind of read it in between doing other things. I started it like last August, and I decided to finish it this June, so I was working on that for a really long time. I just kind of started reading it when it got really popular last August, and then I wanted to finish it in time to watch the movie, and I rated it 5 stars. It was a really good, silly romance. Next, I read Part of Your World, A Twisted Fate, the graphic novel by Liz Braswell, which is, you know, a lot of things. Once and for all, it is a graphic novel. It is a retelling of The Little Mermaid, where there's actually a book version of it. If you don't like graphic novels, I highly recommend the book version of it. I loved it so much, I bought its graphic novel counterpart. It is, I guess I can just read it. No, I'm going to tell you it. It is about Ariel after the events of The Little Mermaid, if she had not been able to save her father or get Prince Eric at the end. So it's Prince Eric falls under the spell of Ursula pretending to be Ariel. He marries her as Vanessa, and then Ariel is just left to rule the kingdom of Atlantis by herself because her father is gone. She has no voice because Vanessa Ursula still has it, and Eric is still under Vanessa Ursula's mind control, and so it's like the two of them falling in love with each other, except she is like a warrior queen now, and she looks awesome like this, and it's really good as a graphic novel if you don't want to read the whole book, but it's also really good as a book if you don't like graphic novels. So I highly recommend this. Once again, highly recommending things, 5 stars. Then in July, I finished, I'm going to hold it on my iPad because I don't know where it is right now, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I have this book somewhere. I read it physically, but I think my brother is currently reading it, so I don't have it. I only wanted to read it so I could watch the movie. That is a bold-faced truth. I needed to read it before I watched the movie because people were saying it was good and I just couldn't get myself into it. The beginning for me, for some reason, was so hard to get through. Like the first 4 chapters, it follows Coriolanus Snow, who is President Snow, but it's like way, way, way in the past of the 10th Hunger Games, ? Somewhere around there. Somewhere around the 10th Hunger Games, where he lives in the capital. He's a student at the school where he's a mentor to the District 12 girl tribute, Lucy Gray Baird. And it's all told from his perspective. And the first 4 chapters for me, for some reason, I didn't like his perspective. He was telling me too many things, too many facts, too many ideas I had to get through. I didn't like what he was saying, and I was like, I have to get through this because everyone says this is a really good book. And then I liked kind of the middle section of it. It was pretty good. It was of the Hunger Games, of Lucy Gray Baird going into the Hunger Games, Coriolanus Snow helping her. It was really interesting how he looked at the world. He did a lot of things to help her. Then the Hunger Games itself was pretty okay. Then he becomes a peacekeeper. I guess this is a spoiler warning. The movie's out. I don't know, a lot goes on, and I liked it. I didn't love it, and then right at the end, I freaking loved it. It had the greatest, gut-wrenching, ever. I've never been shocked, as much by a book, even though I knew what he ends up being. He ends up being President Snow of the Hunger Games, which I've read and watched a million times, and yet I, forgot that, apparently, and I loved it so much. If you don't know what the Hunger Games, if you don't know what the Hunger Games are, I'm shocked. If you haven't read the Hunger Games, I think you could if you haven't read the Hunger Games, I think you could get away reading this, and still enjoy it, but it not nearly as much. Everything is a reference back to the Hunger Games, but not in a way that feels like Suzanne Collins did this just to get a check. It feels like she had this planned out, and it makes the original Hunger Games books and movies so much better. If you like the Hunger Games, it really is worth it. If you don't like the first 4 chapters, I'm with you there, but get through it. It's so worth it. 5 stars. This should be 6 stars. This is it was really good. Then I finished off July by reading on my phone Chase and the Girl Who Came Back by Amber Davis. This is a self-published book by Amber Davis. It is, and the next book I read actually is also by her. It is Arden and the Girl Downstairs, and I started that in August. So I read those 2 back to back on my phone. They're the only 2 that have come out in the beginning of this series that she's building of New Hope World, apparently is the name of that series. It's the first one, Chase and the Girl, no, yes, Chase and the Girl Who Came Back, is all about the boy Chase and the girl who came back. It's a very self-explanatory title. But it's a romance story between the two of them. She has diabetes and has like weird family issues, and he has a very loving family and like a crazy group of friends. And it's the two of them falling in love. And then I bring up the diabetes only because that's like a big plot point throughout of them like helping her understand how to like live a life with diabetes. It was a really good story, with like twists and turns and highs and lows and, you know, some good romance. And then the second book is Arden and the Girl Downstairs. And so Arden is one of Chase's friends, and their whole friend group, Chase and the Girl Who Came Back, and their whole friend group, now they're all best friends. They all move to an apartment complex together where there is a girl who is staying there that's not their friend. And so Arden and this girl are falling in love, and that's the plot of the second one. Except it's got all of them, and so she's writing more, and they're all from like different perspectives of this friend group, and so you like get to know them in like this complete full way. And I love the two of them. These two books, I read them so fast. I read them on my phone, which I don't do a lot of reading on my phone, like of like actual books, and these were so good. I highly recommend them. In August, after I read the last book, I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. M.L. Rio. This is a Shakespeare book all the way through. Like it's about a group of college theater kids who go to this crazy college that like cares a lot about the arts, and they're all the senior theater kids, and they put on only Shakespeare plays, and they like speak in Shakespeare riddles, and they like tell each other just Shakespeare lines like in their day-to-day life. Honestly, goals. Even though I claim I don't like Shakespeare, but I also claim I love Shakespeare, so it's really confusing. Loved this. You don't need to know Shakespeare to know what's going on in this book. It might help, but like I don't know a lot about Shakespeare, and some of the plays they put on, I have like vague ideas of what the plot of those are, but it like gives you enough context that you totally can get away without it. Highly recommend this book. Highly recommend all these books, but really recommend this book. This one was really good. Then after that, I read One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. This is the third book in the One of Us is Lying series, which was a show on Peacock as well. And that has a couple series, but I've only ever watched the first season of it. I really like this whole series. I really love everything written by Karen M. McManus. I have most, if not every book that she's written so far, and I've read most of them. I have like one or two, I think, that I haven't read from her yet. But I love her mystery novels. They're all mysteries of different things going on. I'm not even going to lie. I don't know if I remember the actual plot of this book. There's a game. I don't remember this book at all. Yeah, I rated it 5 stars. A beautiful end to a series I love. That's what I wrote. What? There's something about, there's like a game going on that's exposing all of their secrets, and it's from multiple perspectives. It's from the 3 of them and their perspectives from the other 2 books. I really like these a lot. I would look these up, look up anything written by Karen M. McManus. Then I read The 6 Olympians by Maria Alcorn. This is a self-published book. It is about, I found it on TikTok, and I liked what she was saying, and I was like, yeah, I want to read your book. I read a lot of self-published books, as you can tell. It is about the 6 Olympians, but what if they were orphans in an orphanage and they have no memories of being Olympians, and so they have to like get their memories back and work together to solve things. I thought this was a complete novel on its own, but it's not. It's definitely the beginning of a series, and she hasn't written any more. I liked it a lot. It was, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt sometimes with self-published novels. I feel like this was somewhere in the middle. It wasn't one of the best self-published novels, but I've definitely seen way worse self-published novels. I rated this 4 stars. I remember liking it a lot. I wished some parts were a little better written maybe, or maybe some stuff was just a little off to me, but it was nothing like too crazy that I was like, maybe I should stop reading this. I still highly enjoyed it, but I like this book a lot. You could pick it up if you want. It's not a to die for, but it was a really good book. Then, just to end out August, I started reading a different comic book series, Red Hood and the Outlaws, which is just, he's another one of Batman's children. Just do with that what you will. We were going into school, and I was worried that I wasn't going to make my reading goal, and I wanted to read my comics. Then in September, we went back to school, and I only started reading my school books because I ran out of time to do anything else. So that started with The Visit by Frederick Durnmont. It is written, it is a play, as you can see. It's like it's just like dialogue and text. I would never have picked this up on my own, ever, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. It was actually pretty funny. It was really intriguing. The characters were crazy. It's all about this town in the middle of nowhere that thinks this heiress comes to visit, and she used to live there, and they think she's gonna give the town a bunch of money, but she says she'll only do it if they kill the main character because he cheated on her when they were younger or something like that. And so she doesn't like him, but he's still in love with her. And so the entire book is just about like the town weighing this decision of if they're gonna kill him or not. And it was really good. It was once again like almost like on that psychological line, but it wasn't quite once again. But it was kind of funny and it had some silly lines. And I really like her name is Claire. She's the heiress. I love her character. It's like so ridiculous. I actually would recommend this book. It's pretty short. I read it in a day. I like this book a lot. Then for a different class, I read Adorning the Dark by Andrew Peterson. This is, you know, it's really interesting because this is like an autobiography by Andrew Peterson about his life, like writing songs and writing books. And I still don't know who Andrew Peterson is. I probably should have like looked him up while reading this, but I'm definitely not going to do it now. But I like this a lot. It had a lot of really good advice for writing if you are into like writing books at all. I liked it a lot. Some of the chapters I like didn't really care for. It was like whatever. It was kind of about his life, and I don't know who he is, but he has some really interesting stories about like life on tour and writing songs and singing songs and writing books and balancing a home life and a work life of like writing. And I enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. I don't think this book is for everyone, but if you like writing, if you like writing music too, a lot of it was about writing music, and I just kind of would like enjoy those parts and then move on because those don't really didn't apply to me. I'm holding this book really weird, but I like this book a lot. It was pretty good. Then in October, we continued with these books. I read Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. This is a prequel that she wrote to Jane Eyre by Emily Bronte? Charlotte Bronte? Charlotte Bronte? Question mark, question mark? I'm not looking it up. I have never read Jane Eyre, so this was really weird for me. If you've read Jane Eyre, and you like Jane Eyre, and you like the crazy woman in the attic, that's the part I forgot to mention. This is about the crazy woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. If you like her and think she's sweet, you should read this book probably. I rated it 2 stars because I didn't understand what was going on at all, ever. Then I read Watering the Soul by Courtney Peppernell. This is a poetry / prose book all about like, ooh, my dogs are barking. All about like healing your soul, obviously, like taking care of yourself. I like this a lot. This was a shocking discovery for me. I want to read more of her books, actually. One of my friends was like, oh, you probably shouldn't read her. I don't like her books. I like her books. So I would maybe take a stab at this one, or there's a couple others that are similar to it. I know she's written Pillow Thoughts, which is really popular, but I've never read that, so I don't know. If this one's written more recently, so I don't know if that's like more helpful. Like maybe some of her older work is just not as good, because that's what my friend was like, oh, I read Pillow Thoughts and I didn't like it, but this is a more recent book, so maybe her writing style changed. I don't know if you like poetry at all. It's not like rhymey poetry actually at all. It's like, and it's divided into sections with really cool drawings. That's not what I was looking for at all. I was looking for a poem, actually. I underlined some stuff that I really liked. There's stories more than that, apparently I highlighted. But it's just kind of like free verse poetry. I liked it a lot. Oh, I guess I rated that 4 stars. Then I only read the first half of this because it's technically 2 different books. And it's 2 different books on Goodreads, so I counted it as 2 different books. I read Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. It is a story about her life. This was a very intense, it's a graphic novel once again, except these were originally like newspaper articles, and then, oh, she turned it into a book. It was a very intense book. A lot about war and death and torture, which I was not prepared for. If you are prepared for that and you like stuff like this, I think this is really good. One of my other friends loved this book in class. She like has read this like 10 times already and she loves it. And I don't know if I will ever read the second book because it was a lot for me the first time around. So I rated 3 stars. I feel like that's just because I don't personally read these kinds of books. Then in November, I started the year off with this great book called The Enlightenment of the Green Gates Tree by Shigofel Azar. I hated this book, and it's a personal opinion because this is like a world-renowned book. I think like everyone else in my class loved it. Everyone else in my class loved it. And I felt like I was going crazy the entire time. It is a realistic fantasy novel, which means there's like, the main character is a ghost, which was crazy to me, which was fine. That was actually like the most normal part of this whole thing. But once again, I don't know which word it was because it like never says, and we talked about it one day in class and I didn't write it down. And then I'm not looking things up. But some of these scenes were like so graphic, and I do not read very graphic things. Like I read my silly goofy mystery novels, and that's like as intense as I can get. This was like intense about certain things, and it's not even the whole like book, it's just like certain scenes are like really crazy. I did not like it. If things like that don't bother you, I think this is a really good book. Like the rest of it was actually fairly okay. There's like a lot of crazy things that go on that you just kind of have to ignore, but just some of it for me was too much. So you can do whatever you like with this one. I don't recommend this one, but other people do recommend it, so look it up if ghost girl telling a story sounds interesting. Then we're in like the kick of in the middle of school. I read Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. This is a full-blown sci-fi novel about a bunch of scientists on a space station studying a planet that is sentient and can give them like visions of their past loved ones. This is a really interesting book. I don't really read sci-fi very often, like this intensive sci-fi. I rated it 3 stars. I had to do a bunch of projects on it, so I like read it really in depth. And some of the ideas in here were really interesting. I skimmed a lot of it because there would be like 4 pages of them telling me the history of this planet that I don't care about. So that's just not really like things that I'm very much into. But if you like sci-fi, this is like an older sci-fi that's like, it was really good, honestly. It has like a little bit of romance, not a lot of romance, and a lot of like lying and secrets and trying to figure out what's going on with this planet. I actually liked it fairly well. Then I read, I don't have this book. Then I read Madison Park, A Place of Hope, Eric L. Motley. You can see I rated it 3 stars. That's just because I don't really, once again, know who this person is. It is a complete biography about his own life, and I do not know who he is. He is a politician. He came from a really town called Madison Park, and it was actually really interesting learning about his town and his childhood and all these people around him. And then he went to the government, and then he worked in the White House for a while. It wasn't an awful book. I just didn't really know who he was, so I didn't really care very much, but it was a pretty good biography. Then I read another biography in a different class called Joni, An Unforgettable Story by Joni Eareckson Tada. And I actually think that's not how you say her name at all, but I can't remember. It was more like, I'm not gonna pretend. It is about her. She got paralyzed in an accident and then like had to relearn how to do everything. There are just a million note cards in all of these books that I remember putting in there that keep falling out. I thought it was a pretty interesting book. I rated it 3 stars once again. I think I was just like kind of over reading biographies of people that I didn't really know. I think if you're more interested in these concepts, these were better for you, but I don't read a lot of biographies, and when I do, they're usually about Tom Felton and Harry Potter. Like that's the biography I chose to read. These are the biographies I was forced to read. This one is better than the Madison Park books. If you're looking for a biography, I actually recommend this one more. This one, I think I rated 3 stars because there was a lot of talk about doctors and hospitals and like in depth, and I don't do well with that kind of stuff. So I just was like, I didn't really like those chapters. And that was like the whole beginning. So I was really upset by that. But it was a really inspirational story about her like learning how to do everything and like learning to trust on God and like find new friends. It's a really interesting book. I guess I rated it 3 stars, but I actually would recommend this over the other one. Then I rounded out November by during Thanksgiving break. I read Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods, which is a 6th book in I don't know. It's a Percy Jackson and the Olympians book, but it also takes place after like all the other books. So now there's even more Percy Jackson books for everyone to read. And this one, I don't know where it fits in the timeline, like before the Trials of Apollo, but after the Heroes of Olympus, it's somewhere in there. I think you need to know about Percy Jackson to even want to read this one. But it was a really good book. It's Percy Jackson, Annabeth, and Grover, which is the core trio from the original Percy Jackson series, obviously. It came out, and with the show coming out, it was really fun to just like dive back into Percy Jackson. But older Percy Jackson, as he's trying to get into college now as a senior in high school. And I really liked it a lot. It was really fun. They're great characters. It's a 5 stars. Anything Percy Jackson is like most likely going to become 5 stars for me. I love this a lot. I think he's writing more of these because it seems like he needs to do more quests to get into college, which is, you know, fine by me if that means I get to read more Percy Jackson. So I like this one a lot. 5 stars. I highly recommend Percy Jackson to everyone. Just start with like the actual Percy Jackson books, but I like this one a lot. Then in December, I started by finishing Look Out for the Little Guy by Scott Lang, but also it's by an actual author, not Scott Lang. It's by, it's like hidden. Rob Kuttner. I read this in the entirety of my fall semester. I would like randomly pick this up and like read a chapter. It takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as if it was written by Scott Lang about, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I wish I liked this more. I rated it 4 stars, but I almost would say it's worth 3 stars. It's like only rated 4 stars because like Paul Rudd's on the cover and it's Scott Lang and I love Scott Lang. But it was just kind of like him retelling me what happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but like from his perspective, even though he wasn't there for it. This is the weirdest conversation ever because it feels like these people are real, but they're not. It was a good book. Like, it was enjoyable, but there were some chapters I was just like, I've watched these movies. I know what happened in them. I don't need you to tell me. So it was an interesting book. I don't say it's worth like I guess it would be like more like a 3.5. I've never really done half stars. I just like give them all or nothing. But I would actually say this is like a 3.5. It's like not really a 4, but not really a 3. It was pretty good. Like if you like Marvel and you're not like super into Marvel and to know everything, I think this would be fun. If you like Ant-Man, I think it's a good book. Then in December, I started reading this. It's Cautionary Tales by Ridley Pearson, who is the same person that wrote The Kingdom Keepers. I started this in October and I planned fully on reading it before Halloween and then just absolutely gave up after like 4 chapters because I did not have time. We had a week of chaos in October where I just like needed to get through the week. So I finished this once we got off for Christmas and we had break and I had time to read. Because it's a really big book all around. This is 100% not for a 21-year-old. I am in the wrong demographic of this book. It is for middle schoolers, for sure, like 100% more so than I feel like the Kingdom Keepers books were originally. It was just like very kiddish in its like essence as a book. I don't know how else to describe that. Like the plot was not bad. It just was very like kid. It's these two are stuck in the magic mirror and like live through all these stories of villains and they have to like get through them and figure out how to like save the hero or like change the story somehow. I didn't hate it. I actually rated it 4 stars, but I feel like this fills in another like 3.5 category. Okay, then I read I read Unsteady by Peyton Corin. This is another self-published book. I, once again, saw it on TikTok, was following this author for a really long time, and I was like, I like the stuff that you're saying about when this book comes out. The second it comes out, I will be buying it. I will be reading it. I did just that. It came out maybe November, early December. I bought it. I read the whole thing in like a couple days. It is about an ice skater and a hockey player who, you know, they gotta fall in love. But he has like PTSD from injuring himself on the ice. She is taking care of her 2 younger brothers and trying to get them through like hockey training and stuff. And so they kind of like, there's a lot going on. It's like a lot more than just ice skater, hockey boy romance. There's like actually like a really good plot surrounding it. And I rated this 5 stars. This is like, I really love this book. The ending was a little strange, but that's just my opinion. I think a lot of people probably love the ending of this book. I liked it a lot. Very good like winter book, you know, ice skating, hockey, winter books. I liked it a lot. Really good romance, really good plot, really good characters, really good building, world. I like this a lot. Then you know, I just you know, casually read Batman Wayne Family Adventures Volume 1, which is a graphic novel about all of the children. So once again, if you want to know, this is all of that's Batman and all of his children and Alfred the butler. I would read these. This is like top tier Batman content 5 stars, 6 stars. This is great. I will be reading the next one that I have that I got for Christmas later. Great. So then I'm currently reading 2 books. I will be finishing this before the end of the year because I need to reach my 45 book goal, which is Julie and the Phantoms, an original novel, Whatever Happens, which I'm going to tell you right now, this is probably going to be like a 3-star. This might be a 2-star. I'm not totally sure. It might be a 3-star, like halfway through, unless something shocking happens towards the end. I'm definitely not the demographic for this book either, but I really liked the show Julie and the Phantoms. And this, I thought, took place after the events of the show, but it like kind of does, but like also 99% of it is told in flashbacks. So I don't think I would recommend this, but it is an interesting book, and it is a little silly goofy, and I will be finishing it, and I will be giving it probably 3 stars. And then the last thing that I'm doing is, this will not be done by the end, but I am currently reading the first Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief right now, because I'm reading it alongside the show that's coming out. And I actually think when that show finishes in January, if, you know, I decide to keep doing videos, I want to make a video about this book and that show. There's a lot of similarities and differences between the book and the show, and even I think I have the script of the Broadway play musical. I have that script as well, and if I compared the 3, I think that'd be very interesting. So my hope is that I do that, I guess not in January, because the show ends January 30th, and I will not finish a whole video by then, but maybe in February I'll talk about it, and I think that would be fun. And that was my 2023 book review. It took me an hour to film this, which was longer than I thought. I read 45 books this year. I will have read 45 books this year. And I enjoyed most of them. I thought this was fun. I like sharing everything that I do. I read a lot. My hope is to read 50 books next year. See where that goes, see where that happens. Graduating college in April, and theoretically we'll have more time, but I can't count on that. So I'll probably keep making videos, make more book videos, make some senior year, end of the year videos. So if you're into any of that, I would subscribe to my channel, click the like button, maybe comment down below if you liked any of my books, or if you have any book recommendations for me based on what I read. I would totally love that. I will check them out myself. And I will see you next time. See you later. Okay, first of all, before I finish, you need to look at, first of all, that's my setup. That's what I've been balancing my camera on. Don't ignore the Disney dolls. That's where I put all of the books. There's just a mess of them on my floor. That's my fault. Okay, bye.